I'm Christoph. I work at Facebook. I'm an engineering manager on the JavaScript tools team in London. And today I'm going to talk about building high-quality JavaScript tools. Because at Facebook we learned that we need to continuously invest into our developer experience and we need to make tools delightful. And I'd like to show you how we applied a product mindset to Jest, our JavaScript testing framework that aims to make testing painless. And I want to show you how we worked with the JavaScript community to rebuild it. A quick show of hands, who has heard of Jest? OK, that's a lot of people. Who is using Jest? Oh, that's great. OK, awesome. If you're not using it yet, I'll try to convince you. If you're already using it, then I'll make you want to use it more. So unfortunately, JavaScript testing with Jest wasn't quite as painless as we wanted it to be. This story has some dark moments. And in open source, nobody was starting to adopt Jest. And I'm not making this up. This is an actual tweet about Jest from about 2 years ago. This is not something you ever want to hear about a project. We knew we had some work to do. And at Facebook, it wasn't that much better. Jest worked OK as a tool to write tests for your JavaScript applications. But here's the thing. In this oil painting, you can see a party going on in the background. And this jester, he's just so gloomy and sad. And this is literally the experience that people had at Facebook when they were dealing with JavaScript testing. Everybody was super excited about building React applications, but we found that nobody was actually writing any tests because JavaScript testing with Jest wasn't great. So we decided to rebuild Jest and to turn that sad jester into a happy one. But you might be asking yourself, hold on, do we even need testing? Like, who cares? Maybe we don't even need it. We realized that Jest isn't great, but maybe we can get by without any testing. But of course, testing is an important part of the engineering process. It significantly influences engineering behavior, and we learned that people write code differently with or without a test framework. And to be specific about this, it helps by enabling a faster iterative development cycle. It makes sure you have fewer bugs in your applications, and you can make releases more often. So when we go on to improve testing, we can look at it as we would at any product. Like, what do you do with it, and how can we make that experience better? So for Jest, it's about what do you want when you're running tests, the test runner, and what do you want when you're writing tests. For running tests, I want feedback as quickly as possible. It should be instant. It should give me signal about failing and passing tests immediately. And for writing tests, I want the best possible testing APIs available to me, but also I want to have great documentation so that I can learn how to write effective tests. And as we develop these requirements, we can come up with 3 things. One of them is performance, the other one is features, and then adoptability. All 3 of these requirements, they're equally important. You need to fulfill all of them at the same time to make a successful product. For example, if you're building the most feature-rich test runner, but then it's really, really slow, nobody's going to adopt it. And at the same time, if you're building a really, really fast test runner with no features, again, nobody will adopt it. And then also, of course, if you're building the most amazing test runner, but nobody's using it, then what's the point of all of this? So I gave you a bunch of buzzwords, but if we peel back this product layer a little bit and look at emoji and what it was like as an engineer working on this was really, really hard and painful. We had something that didn't work well, and we had to figure out how to fix it. And I kind of came up with these 3 things that kind of help, if you think about this, that help you on this process to make something great. It's fix, rewrites, and polish. It's kind of like FRP, functional reactive programming, but this one is fix, rewrites, and polish. And let me take you through this journey by focusing on the 3 major requirements. And the first one is performance. Performance at scale is the most important feature, actually. At Facebook, we realized that we had thousands of existing test suites and a slow test runner, so we decided to fix that. And naturally, your instinct would tell you, OK, this is not great. Let's just dump it. Let's just build a new thing and replace the old thing. But we had so many tests at Facebook that we couldn't do that. And then also from past experience, we learned that big rewrites significantly take longer than anticipated, and sometimes they don't even work out at all. So we decided to improve our testing framework by explicitly not rewriting the whole thing, but by making major changes incrementally in small parts of the framework itself. And I want to stress that it's often enough to make 1% improvements over time. Here's a part of the system that we rewrote where it really helped. Internally at Facebook, we have thousands of test files and tens of thousands of modules. We have a lot of information that we need to keep track of to run tests. It's not just which tests are associated with which modules, it's also which modules are associated with which tests, so that we can run the correct tests when files are changing. So we rebuilt a system that analyzes the entire file system and then extracts metadata from all the files that we care about, and then also tracks dependencies. For example, in Jest, when you're using it and you're changing the store file up there, Jest will know that it only needs to run the store test instead of all the thousands of test files that you might have. We also rewrote the system that parallelizes test runs across worker processes on your machine by looking at data from previous test runs. That makes Jest a lot faster. And then, as I told you, we made many small improvements over time. We changed how we cache transformed files to be more effective. We improved our module resolution algorithm that we have in Jest. And also, we upgraded third-party libraries to better alternatives, because we haven't worked at Jest for a while, and then we just figured out what alternatives have been created since then. So now that we have performance in a good state, and we can run Jest with tens of thousands of test files, we need to look at features. Jest comes with dozens of awesome features out of the box, but today I'll only focus on 3 of them. First one is the improved output. Then we'll talk about this immersive watch mode that sucks you into Jest, and you kind of just stay there, and it's an awesome unit testing experience. And then we'll also talk briefly about the snapshot assertion. So let's focus on the improved output first. This is what Jest used to look like. There were log messages all over, stack traces that didn't matter, and you have a failing assertion. You're trying to compare 2 objects, and you have no idea what's going on, right? We realized that Jest was kind of OK when tests were passing, but the value of a test framework is to actually give you a signal about failing tests and helping you resolve those issues. So we just completely rewrote the assertion library with this product mindset to figure out, what do engineers want to see when a test is failing? For example, we color-coded everything so that you know what is green, what is red. And then also we're showing a diff when 2 objects don't match up, so you know exactly what's going on. The exciting thing about this is that we give Jest its own identity. When you see a screenshot of a test framework, you instantly know it's Jest. That's awesome. We also have this concurrent runner. It's beautiful. It shows you exactly which test is running right now, what the status of the test run is, and it even shows you how long the test run is likely going to take based on previous test runs. What's also awesome is that Jest actually takes a note when a test is failing, and the next time you run it, it actually runs the failed tests first to give you a signal about those tests immediately, because that's what you probably care about the most at that point in time. Then next, I want to talk about the immersive watch mode. This one is really cool. Let's take a quick look. It just runs tests really quickly, shows you what's happening, and then what you can do with it. So when you start it up, you just call it with --watch. And then you can press P, for example, for this pattern mode. And then you have this amazing type ahead where you just type in which test you want to run, and you can select it from a drop-down, because Jest knows everything about your system, your project, and knows exactly which tests you have. In the next version of Jest, we extended this a little bit further. You even have keyboard navigation in this. I know I'm talking about a CLI tool, but it's all about beautiful CLI tools and a great developer experience in them. And then finally, I want to talk about snapshots. Have you ever written an assertion like this in any test framework, and you don't know exactly what you're going to put there in your test? You don't know exactly what the output of your function is? That happens quite often, right? And then we do what we always do. We just comment out this assertion, and then we log the value, And we take that and we put it back into our test, and we're like, OK, we're done here. And then, judging from the faces that I see, a bunch of you are as guilty of doing this as I am, right? So we decided to make this a bit easier, because we found that a lot of people weren't even writing tests for a lot of code that could benefit from this. So we introduced this new assertion called to match a snapshot. Here, I'll show you how it works. The first time, it's really simple when you're using it. You'll inspect the output of your code, and then Jest will just record it as a snapshot in a snapshot file. The next time you're running this test, Jest will compare the snapshot with the output of your code. In this example, we are changing the link of a React component from facebook.com to instagram.com, and then Jest will yell at you and say, hey, look, something in your system has changed. Is this intentional or not? And then if you decide, yes, that is actually a change I wanted to make, you can pass in a flag to update all the snapshots. All right, and a bunch of you might be looking at me like, now, hold on, Christoph. What are we doing here? This is not testing at all, right? But we found that it's actually a lot better to be able to create a bunch of these kind of tests for regression testing, for example, really quickly, instead of just waiting until that code hits production, and that is the first time anybody's ever running that code, right? So it's preventing a lot of issues for people. And snapshots, I want to be clear about that. They don't replace conventional testing or all the other assertions. It's just an addition on top of those. It's just one assertion among like 20 or 30 or however many ship with Jest. The choice is not between snapshot testing and other assertions. The choice is between snapshot testing or no testing at all. There are projects like Prettier, the JavaScript formatter, where I'm confident it wouldn't exist in its current form if it weren't for snapshot testing. It just couldn't have moved as quickly. And then, as you know by now, because I told you, Jest is a great test runner. It can do everything. Like this jester in this photo, it just takes care of everything. It's amazing. Which brings me to a really exciting announcement. It's actually really big, but then in the end, it's kind of unimpressive. I'm going to show you one more feature. Have you ever found yourself like juggling multiple projects on one day and you have like a really hard time? Imagine you're building a React frontend and a Node.js backend, or you're working at Facebook, you're having a terrible day, you're trying to debug a bunch of projects at the same time, and you have like a bunch of test runs in a bunch of different projects, and that's not really fun. So we taught Jest how to juggle. And we're calling this the multi-project runner, which leads me to this incredibly unimpressive demo. In the next version of Jest, Jest 20, you'll be able to pass any amount of projects that you're working on. And then it works something like this. You can stay inside of Jest all day long. It will watch all your projects at the same time in a single instance. Here, it's going to be running a few tests in watch mode. I'm starting it up with a bunch of projects like Yarn and Jest and Relay and React. And you can filter all the tests across all of these projects. And for example, here we're deciding to run all of the tests for React and Relay. Just hit Enter. We run all the tests. So that's going to be shipping in the next version of Jest. And finally, about features, I want to say that the experience should be delightful. I don't want to fight with my test runner, because only if the experience is enjoyable, then that will actually make people want to write more tests. So now that we looked at performance and features, we should also talk a little bit about adoptability, because we spent all of this time at Facebook to make Jest really, really good, and now we just want you to give it a try as well. How do you get started with this? The great thing about Jest is that we turned it into the zero configuration test framework. It ships with a ton of great features out of the box, and all you need to do is install it with Yarn. Then you can go on to write a simple test, and then you just run it. It has code coverage built in. You don't need to set anything up. For most projects, that will just work. We also managed to bundle Jest with other JavaScript tools to form a more cohesive development experience. If you're using React Native or Create React App, you'll get a test setup with Jest by default, and you don't need to set anything up. This also leads me to another small announcement. So the JavaScript tools team in London at Facebook is also working on Yarn, the package manager. Next week, we're going to ship a really, really tiny command that I'm excited about. It's called Yarn Create, and it's extendable, and you can look at it as your new entry point to build any application, right? So instead of installing some global CLI, you can just say Yarn Create React app or Yarn Create a React Native app, and you can build your own plugins for that. This is a super sweet way to get started with something new. These low-friction ways to get started are great, and you might even start your next project with Jest, right? But that's not good enough. We also need to figure out how can we make Jest work, make Jest work for you when you already have a big project. When you peel back the outer layer of Jest, you should ideally also find things that make sense on its own. And that wasn't always the case. So not long ago, Jest was just one big repository with not much internal structure. So we did something super obvious. We introduced structure by turning it into one big modular repository. We actually split up Jest into 30 individual packages that can be reused in many different contexts. We're talking about pulling things apart from like one big giant thing into many, many small packages. This helped with the separation of concerns between the different modules, and it naturally led us to turning Jest into a platform. We actually ship all of these packages to NPM, and you can install all of them individually and use them in contexts that sometimes don't even have anything to do with testing. They range from things like an ESLint plugin to an editor support plugin to the snapshot implementation and all the other low-level modules of Jest. A lot of them can actually be used outside of Jest. At Facebook, for example, we use this haste map package that analyzes all your dependencies. At Instagram, in React Native's packager, and also for some of our internal ESLint plugins. The snapshot package has been adopted by another test runner and by React UI development libraries like Storybooks and Style Guidist. And then the Jest validate package is a tool that can help you for your own JavaScript tools to make it easier to set them up and give meaningful error messages to the users. This has been adopted in Prettier. I'll show you just a quick example of this one because I think it's kind of cool. I'm sure all of you can agree with me that JavaScript tools could be easier to set up for the first time, right? So if you drop in Jest validate into your own projects, you can make it easier for everybody. In this case, for example, if you're trying to set up Jest for the first time, you have a typo in your configuration, it will actually yell at you, and that's really easy to set up. So packages let us to consolidate infrastructure and to share best practices. It's a good case where all the parts together, Jest, is pretty good, but the parts individually, they are also great. And about sharing best practices, the way I see it is the more we can standardize on how we write tests, the easier it will be for people to figure out how to write effective tests. And then the other effect that this separation of concerns had is that it made the Jest project more hackable, and we were able to build a great open source community around it. For example, this is the editor integration in VS Code for Jest. This is something that's awesome. It gives you instant feedback, and we didn't even realize that this is something that was being worked on until it was already done. And we managed to merge the generic pieces back into Jest so that other IDEs can adopt this and provide a great unit testing experience with Jest. We managed to add 2 new core contributors to Jest who are not working at Facebook, and they're just contributing to Jest on their own time. I'll show you an example of what that is. So Rogelia and Michal joined the team something like this. So I just created an issue on our issue tracker, and I was like, oh, I have this idea. We should build this type ahead that I showed you earlier, right? And then it's a fairly complex feature. And then one day I woke up, and Rogelia was like, hey, I found this really interesting. So I just went ahead and built it, and it was amazing. And I come back and like, wow, this is great. We should ship this. But we actually need to rewrite the whole thing to make this work for Facebook's use case. And like, here's an example of how you could do that. And then a couple days later, he just came back and he's like, hey, here's another pull request. I rewrote the whole thing. I added tests. It's awesome. Let's ship it. And that was a really great experience. And Rogelia did a ton of awesome work for Jest and even presented it at JSConf 2 months ago. And so did dozens of other people. The Jest project is now approachable and easy to contribute to by anybody. We noticed that there are new contributors to Jest every week that we haven't even known about before, so that's awesome. And the contributors and many others, they are now touring the world with talks at conferences like this one. There's tutorials, blog posts, books even written about Jest. And finally, I feel like we have new conversations about how we can simplify testing and write more tests. And I feel like that's really exciting. One thing that I'm going to ask you, the JavaScript community, is we need help with translations. Documentation is essential to teach people how to write tests. And if tests or documentation is not written in the language that you're most familiar with, it's really hard to get started. So if you have some time, if you speak another language, please help us translate the documentation for Jest. We would really appreciate it. But that's still not enough to get people to adopt Jest. We need something more if you have an existing project. And some people might have seen this slide before, and they're catching on to what I'm trying to do here. So I was here about 2 years ago, and I announced this concept of code mods to the JavaScript community, right? It's like this system of how you can transform entire code bases to new APIs, right? So there's this project called Jest Code Mods, and together with JSConf, you can convert an existing project to Jest. If you haven't been there at the last JSConf, here's a small refresher. Say you have this test. With JSConf and Jest Code Mods, you can automatically convert this and print all of your files the way as if you had written them yourselves into your project immediately in a couple of seconds. And I have a short demo of this. So I found this project. All I did so far, I added Jest. It has a couple hundred tests. And then I just type Jest Code Mods. No, not code mod, code mods. All right, and then I've looked at the test before. We're converting chai and expect. And then I just hit enter, and it takes a couple of seconds. Code mods break down silos between frameworks. They enable you to move from one framework to other frameworks in a couple of seconds. And all we need to do now is we run Jest. And that takes a couple of seconds. I tested it before. It's a little bit faster than it was before, so you get a nice performance speed up. That is the wrong version of Jest also. I apologize. We need Yarn for this. OK, this is going to take a couple of seconds. So this is super exciting. You can just go to a new test runner. All right, there's only about 8 tests failing out of 300, so I feel pretty good about this. All right, let me just push this. I have it here already. So I just wanted to send a quick pull request if my internet's working. It is not. No, there it is. All right. I'll explain a bit more later. All right, we got this. Cool. The best part of this story is that Jest Code Mods was entirely community-driven. The project was created by the community, iterated on by the community, and is maintained by the community. This is awesome. As a result, more than 100 companies have told us that they have adopted Jest in the last 6 months alone. Some of them are really big, some of them are really small. This wasn't possible without code mods. If we look at metrics at Facebook, the number of tests people wrote in the last 6 months has grown by 35%, which is more than twice as much as it has grown ever before. When we improved our testing experience, people at Facebook naturally started writing more tests. And after all this, the experience of writing tests with Jest is not painful anymore. And I would even say that it's more than just painless. Jest provides a delightful JavaScript testing experience. It's now a product that gives confidence to engineers when they're building software. And not only did we accomplish that, we also made testing fun and exciting. And then finally, I've been mentioning Jest 20 a few times in the last 20 minutes. And I pointed out a bunch of major features that we're going to ship. You know, it's been a while since we have made a major release. And we worked really, really hard on this. It's the biggest Jest release that we've ever made. And I was thinking I'm just going to show and ship this to you right now. We just need to publish it with Yarn and Lerna. And then we'll just tell it, oh, this is going to be a major. Of course, everything's awesome. And then I need to merge this, send another pull request really quick. Just one moment. All right, sweet. All right, so that's 2 pull requests. I think that's enough for today. Thank you. What you've seen today is that building tools is successful when you look beyond your own walls and you collaborate with the wider JavaScript community. With Jest, this was a lesson that we learned the hard way, you know? But the best part about working together is that the best ideas often come from people who you don't work with every day, you know? And the result is an empowered ecosystem and better tools that we can turn into products with a delightful experience. Thank you very much.